What happens when you catch your fiancé cheating with your own brother? Most people get revenge. But what I did, 6 years later, at my father's funeral, it changed everything. And when my ex saw the man standing beside me, his face went completely white. 6 years ago, he took everything from me. Today, I vow he won't take my peace. I'm standing in front of my bathroom mirror trying to put on mascara with shaking hands. Today is my father's memorial service. And after 6 years of building a life far away from this town, I'm about to face the two people who destroyed me. My brother Dylan and Marcus, the man who was supposed to be my husband. You know what's funny? I used to think I was lucky. I thought I had everything figured out. I was 26, engaged to this incredible guy, and planning the wedding of my dreams. But sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. Let me take you back to where it all started. 3 years before the betrayal, that changed everything. I was at this tech awards gala in downtown Chicago. I didn't even want to go, but my best friend Lena dragged me there. She said I needed to get out more, meet new people. I was wearing this navy blue dress that made me feel confident, and the venue was gorgeous, all glass and city lights. That's when I saw him, Marcus Chen. He was giving this speech about innovation and startups, and I swear the entire room was hanging on his every word. He had this presence, this quiet confidence that just drew you in. When he stepped down from the podium, Lena grabbed my arm. "Come on, I know him from college. You have to meet him." I was nervous, but there was something about Marcus that made me feel seen. We talked for hours that night about everything: his company, my marketing career, our families. He told me about growing up as the son of immigrants, how he built his first app in his dorm room. I told him about my dreams of starting my own agency someday. By the end of the night, he asked for my number, and I gave it to him without hesitation. The next few months were like a fairy tale. Marcus would pick me up for dinner in his Tesla, and we'd drive to these little hidden restaurants he'd discovered. He'd send me flowers at work with notes that said things like, "Thinking of you," or "Can't wait to see you tonight." But here's the thing that should have been my first red flag. Marcus fit into my family a little too perfectly. The first time I brought him home for Sunday dinner, my brother Dylan wouldn't stop talking about him. "Claire, do you know how successful this guy is? His company just got featured in Forbes. You really hit the jackpot." I remember laughing it off. "Dylan, he's not a lottery ticket. He's my boyfriend." But Dylan kept going. "No, seriously, Marcus, tell her about that deal you closed last month, the one with the Fortune 500 company." And Marcus would just smile and change the subject. He never liked talking about money or success. That's what I loved about him. My parents adored him too. Mom would always ask when he was coming over again. Dad would corner him in the living room to talk about business strategies. Dylan would invite him to play basketball or grab drinks, just the two of them. I thought it was sweet. I thought it meant Marcus was becoming part of our family. God, I was so naive. The problem started about 2 months before our wedding. Marcus began working late, really late. He'd text me at 11 p.m. saying he was still at the office dealing with some urgent project. Then it became midnight. Then it became him not coming over at all some nights. "I'm sorry, babe," he'd say the next morning. "This acquisition is killing me, but it'll all be worth it after the wedding." I wanted to believe him. I really did, but then there were the mysterious phone calls. He'd be sitting right next to me on the couch and his phone would buzz. He'd glance at it, and his whole demeanor would change. He'd excuse himself and step outside to take the call. One night, I asked him about it. "Marcus, is everything okay? You seem really distracted lately." He kissed my forehead and said, "It's just work stress. Nothing for you to worry about." But I was worrying, because the man I fell in love with used to tell me everything. And now, it felt like he was living a double life. That's when I turned to Lena. We met at our usual coffee shop downtown, this little place called Grind Coffee that makes the best lavender lattes. I was stirring my drink nervously, trying to find the right words. Lena, I think something's wrong with Marcus. She looked up from her laptop. What do you mean wrong? He's been so distant. He's always on his phone, always working late. We barely talk anymore, and when we do, it feels like he's somewhere else. Lena closed her laptop and leaned forward. Claire, have you asked him directly what's going on? I tried, but he just brushes it off, says it's work. Maybe it is work. You know how intense his company is. But I could see the concern in her eyes. Lena had introduced us. She knew Marcus almost as well as I did. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. Dylan's been acting weird too. He keeps asking about Marcus, about our wedding plans. And he's been going out a lot more lately, says he's networking for his job, but what, I don't know, it just feels off, like everyone's keeping secrets from me. Lena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Claire, you need to trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. You have to confront Marcus, really confront him. Not just a casual question, but a real conversation. I nodded, but inside I was terrified, because deep down I knew that if I pushed too hard, I might not like what I found. 2 weeks before the wedding, I finally worked up the courage to have that conversation. Marcus was at my apartment sitting on my couch with his laptop. He'd been typing for hours, barely acknowledging that I was there. Marcus, we need to talk. He didn't even look up. Can it wait? I'm in the middle of something important. And that's when I knew. That's when I knew that whatever was happening, I was no longer the most important thing in his life. I closed his laptop. No, it can't wait. He looked up at me with this annoyed expression like I was interrupting something way more important than our relationship. Claire, seriously? I'm on a deadline here. Marcus, in 2 weeks, we're supposed to get married. And I feel like I don't even know you anymore. He sighed and ran his hands through his hair. What are you talking about? Everything's fine. Everything is not fine. You're never here. When you are here, you're on your phone or your laptop. We haven't had a real conversation in weeks. I told you it's just work. Once this deal closes, everything will go back to normal. But I wasn't buying it anymore. What deal, Marcus? You never tell me specifics. It's always just work, or the deal, or something urgent. I'm your fiancé. I should know what's going on in your life. That's when he got defensive. Really defensive. Claire, you're being paranoid. I'm working my ass off to provide for our future, and all you can do is complain that I'm not paying enough attention to you. The words hit me like a slap. Paranoid, Marcus, I'm asking my fiancé to communicate with me. That's not paranoid, that's normal. Look, I don't have time for this right now. Can we please talk about it later? And he opened his laptop again. Just like that. Like I was dismissed. I stood there for a moment staring at him. This man who used to drop everything just to hear about my day. This man who used to say I was the most important thing in his world. Fine, I said quietly. We'll talk later. But later never came. Marcus left that night around 10 p.m. saying he had an early meeting. He kissed me on the forehead like nothing had happened. That's when I made a mistake. Or maybe it was fate. I don't know anymore. His phone was still on my coffee table. He'd forgotten it in his rush to leave. I stared at it for about 20 minutes, having this internal debate. Should I look? Would that make me a terrible person? But something in my gut was screaming that I needed to know the truth. The phone buzzed with a text message, and I could see the preview on the lock screen. It was from Dylan. My brother Dylan. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I've been thinking about you all day. I felt the blood drain from my face. I must have read it wrong. I had to have read it wrong. I picked up the phone, and another message came through. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about what you said about telling her. My hands started shaking. This couldn't be real. There had to be some explanation. But then another message appeared. I love you too. I dropped the phone like it was on fire. I don't remember much about the next few hours. I think I sat on my couch in complete shock, staring at the wall. Part of me wanted to call Marcus, immediately demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to pretend I never saw those messages. But I couldn't unsee them. And I couldn't ignore what they meant. The next morning, Marcus came back for his phone. He was acting normal, cheerful even. Good morning, beautiful. Sorry I forgot this last night. I watched him pick up his phone and check his messages. I watched his face change when he realized what I might have seen. Marcus, I said quietly, we need to talk. He looked at me, and for the first time in months, I had his full attention. About what? About the text messages from my brother. The color drained from his face, but he tried to play it off. What text messages? Don't lie to me, please, not now. He sat down across from me, running his hands through his hair again. Claire, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Because what I think is that my fiancé and my brother are having some kind of relationship behind my back. It's complicated. Complicated, Marcus. Either you're cheating on me with my brother or you're not. How is that complicated? He was quiet for a long time. Too long. We're just friends, Claire. Dylan's been helping me with some business stuff, and I think you're misinterpreting. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. Don't insult my intelligence. But he kept going. He kept lying. He told me I was being dramatic, that I was reading too much into innocent messages between friends. He said Dylan was just being supportive during a stressful time at work. And for a moment, I almost believed him, because the alternative was too devastating to accept. But then he said something that shattered any doubt I had left. Claire, you know how Dylan is. He's always been overly affectionate with everyone. You're making this into something it's not. That's when I knew he was gaslighting me. Because my brother Dylan was a lot of things, but overly affectionate wasn't one of them. Dylan barely hugged our parents on their birthdays. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my apartment. Now. Claire, you're overreacting. Get out. He left. But not before trying to convince me one more time that I was being irrational. That afternoon, I drove to Dylan's apartment. I had a key because I used to water his plants when he traveled for work. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe I was hoping to find nothing. Maybe I was hoping this was all some horrible misunderstanding. I let myself in and called out, Dylan, are you here? No answer. His car was in the parking lot, so I knew he was home. I walked toward his bedroom, and that's when I heard voices, low, intimate voices. My heart started pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. I pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were, Marcus and Dylan, kissing on my brother's bed. The sound that came out of me wasn't human. It was this guttural, broken sound that I didn't even recognize as my own voice. They jumped apart, and Marcus's face went white. A chair fell over as Dylan scrambled to put on his shirt. The sound of that chair hitting the floor echoed through the room, and I swear it's a sound I'll never forget. How long? That's all I could manage to say. 2 words, how long? They just stared at me. Neither of them answered. How long? Dylan finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Claire, I'm so sorry. How long? Marcus cleared his throat. 4 months. 4 months. 4 months into our engagement. While I was picking out flowers for our wedding, they were sneaking around behind my back. While I was addressing invitations, they were falling in love. While I was planning our honeymoon, they were planning how to destroy my life. I felt my knees give out. I actually collapsed right there in the doorway. Dylan rushed toward me, but I held up my hand. Don't you dare touch me. I pulled myself up using the doorframe and yanked the engagement ring off my finger. I threw it at Marcus, and it hit him in the chest before falling to the floor. The wedding's off. Those were the only words I said before I walked out. I drove straight to Lena's apartment. I don't even remember the drive. I just remember sitting in her living room telling her everything while she held me as I cried. I'm so sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry. Lena didn't try to make it better. She didn't try to find explanations or silver linings. She just let me fall apart. What am I supposed to do now? I asked her. How do I face my family? How do I face anyone? You don't have to face anyone right now. Right now, you just need to take care of yourself. That night, Lena helped me call all the wedding vendors and cancel everything. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the flowers. Each phone call felt like another piece of my heart breaking. The wedding dress was the hardest part. I'd spent months picking it out, getting it fitted perfectly. It was hanging in my closet like a ghost of the future I was supposed to have. Lena offered to return it for me. I couldn't bear to touch it. For the next 2 weeks, I barely left my apartment. I called in sick to work and just lay in bed replaying every moment of the past year looking for signs I'd missed. They were all there. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the way Dylan always asked about Marcus, the way Marcus always lit up when Dylan was around. How could I have been so blind? But then something shifted. I was lying in bed one morning staring at the ceiling when I realized something. I was done being a victim. I was done letting them control my life. I was done hiding. I called my boss and resigned. Just like that. After 3 years at that marketing firm, I quit over the phone. Then I called a headhunter in Chicago and told her I was looking for a fresh start. How soon can you relocate? She asked. Tomorrow, I said, and I meant it. Within a month, I had a new job at a digital marketing agency in Chicago. The pay was better, the opportunities were better, and best of all, it was 300 miles away from Marcus and Dylan. Lena helped me pack. We boxed up 3 years of my life in one weekend. Are you sure about this? She asked as we taped up the last box. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Moving to Chicago was harder than I expected. Not the logistics of it, but the emotional reality of starting over completely. I found a tiny studio apartment in Lincoln Park. It was nothing like the life I'd been planning with Marcus. But it was mine. The first night in my new place, I sat on my air mattress surrounded by boxes, eating takeout Chinese food with plastic forks. I called Lena, and she answered on the first ring. How's the new place? I looked around at the bare walls and cardboard boxes. Starting over sucks. But even as I said it, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. For the first time since I found those text messages, I felt like maybe I was going to be okay. It took me about 3 months to stop looking over my shoulder every time I walked into a coffee shop, wondering if I'd see Marcus or Dylan. But Chicago was good for me. Really good. My new job at Sterling Digital was everything I needed. The office was in this beautiful converted warehouse in River North with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls. It felt like the complete opposite of my old life. On my first day, my boss, Sarah, showed me to my desk and said, "We believe in work-life balance here. No one's expected to answer emails after 6 p.m. or work weekends unless it's an absolute emergency." I almost laughed. After months of watching Marcus glued to his phone at all hours, this felt revolutionary. The team was incredible too. There was Jake, this brilliant graphic designer who always had the best music playing. Maria, our social media strategist who could make anything go viral. And Sam, our project manager, who somehow kept us all organized without being a control freak. But the best part about my new job was that no one knew my story. I didn't have to be the girl whose fiancé cheated with her brother. I could just be Claire, the new marketing director with fresh ideas. 3 weeks into the job, I was settling into my routine when my computer chimed with a video call request. It was Lena. "Oh my God, look at you in your fancy Chicago office," she said when I answered. I laughed and turned my laptop so she could see the view behind me. "Not bad, right? Claire, you look different. Good different. Like you're glowing or something." I looked at myself in the little video window. She was right. For the first time in months, I didn't look exhausted. I feel different too, like I'm finally remembering who I am when I'm not trying to fix a broken relationship. I'm so proud of you, Lena said, and I could see tears in her eyes. When you first told me you were moving, I was terrified you were running away. But you weren't running away, were you? You were running towards something. She was right. I wasn't hiding in Chicago. I was rebuilding. But the real test came 2 months later when my company sent me to a tech conference in Austin. I almost said no. The thought of being in a room full of startup founders and tech executives brought back too many memories of Marcus. But Sarah convinced me to go. Claire, you're perfect for this. You understand both the marketing side and the tech side. Plus, we could really use some new client connections. So I found myself on a plane to Austin trying to convince myself that I was ready for this. The conference was huge. 3 days of panels, networking events, and startup pitches at the Austin Convention Center. I'd been to events like this with Marcus before, but never on my own. Walking into that first networking session, I felt my chest tighten. All these successful, confident people talking about their companies and their deals. For a moment, I felt like that insecure girl again, the one who wasn't quite good enough. That's when I met Evan. I was standing by the coffee station, trying to work up the courage to join a conversation when this guy approached me. "Excuse me, are you okay? You look like you might need some air." I turned around and saw this tall guy with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He was wearing a simple navy blazer and jeans, nothing flashy, but something about him immediately put me at ease. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Just taking in the scene." He nodded knowingly. "These things can be overwhelming. I'm Evan, by the way. Evan Rodriguez." Claire Mitchell." "Nice to meet you, Claire. Is this your first tech conference?" I laughed nervously. "No, but it's my first one flying solo." There was something about the way he said "flying solo" back to me that made me realize he understood exactly what I meant. Want some company while you fly solo? I was about to grab lunch, and eating alone at these things is the worst. Something about Evan felt safe. Not safe like boring, but safe like trustworthy. Like he wasn't going to judge me or try to impress me with how successful he was. "I'd like that," I said. We found a quiet table in the convention center food court, and I learned that Evan was the CTO of a small fintech startup in Austin. He'd been in tech for about 8 years, and this was actually his hometown. "So, what brings you to Austin?" he asked. "Work. I'm with Sterling Digital in Chicago. We're looking to expand our client base in the tech sector." "Chicago, nice. I love that city. How long have you been there?" "About 5 months now." "Ah, so you're still getting settled." Something like that. I expected him to ask more questions to dig into my story, but he didn't. He just nodded and changed the subject to something lighter. We talked for over an hour. About work, about Chicago, about Austin. He told me about the best barbecue places in the city and asked if I'd ever been to a University of Texas football game. I told him about how I was still learning to navigate Chicago winters and how I'd become obsessed with deep dish pizza. It was easy. Easier than conversation had been in months. That evening, there was a group dinner for conference attendees at this trendy restaurant downtown. Evan had mentioned he was going, and when I saw him there, I felt relieved to see a familiar face. But about halfway through dinner, something shifted. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was being in a room full of successful people talking about their accomplishments. But I started feeling anxious, really anxious. My chest felt tight, my palms were sweating, and I couldn't seem to catch my breath. The conversations around me started to sound muffled, like I was underwater. I excused myself and rushed to the bathroom, hoping no one would notice. But Evan noticed. A few minutes later, there was a gentle knock on the bathroom door. "Claire, it's Evan. Are you okay in there?" I wanted to say yes, that I was fine, but the words wouldn't come out. I just need a minute." "Okay, I'm going to wait right here, and when you're ready, we can get some fresh air." He didn't try to fix me or give me advice. He just waited. When I finally came out, he walked me outside without saying a word. We sat on this bench in front of the restaurant, and he handed me a bottle of water. "Panic attacks?" he asked gently. I nodded, embarrassed. "I get them too sometimes, usually when I'm in situations that remind me of difficult times." The way he said it made me look at him more carefully. There was something in his eyes that told me he understood more than he was letting on. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for not making a big deal out of it. We all have our stuff, Claire. The trick is finding people who don't judge you for it." We sat there for probably 20 minutes just talking. He told me about how he dealt with anxiety after his last relationship ended badly. I found myself sharing more than I'd planned to. "My ex-fiancé cheated on me," I said suddenly, "with my brother." Evan didn't gasp or ask for details or tell me how sorry he was. He just nodded. "That's brutal. No wonder you're having panic attacks at networking events." "Yeah, it's been a process." "How long ago?" "About 8 months now." "And you moved to Chicago to start over?" "Pretty much." He was quiet for a moment. "That takes guts. A lot of people would have just stayed put and tried to pretend everything was normal." "Trust me, staying put wasn't an option." "Well, for what it's worth, I think you're brave as hell." Something about the way he said it made me believe him. We ended up talking until almost midnight. Not about work or networking, but about real things. About family and dreams and the things that keep you up at night. When he walked me back to my hotel, he didn't ask for my number or suggest drinks the next night. He just said, "I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, Claire, and I hope things keep getting better for you." But the next morning, I found myself looking for him at the breakfast session. And when I spotted him across the room, he smiled and waved me over. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. "Better. Much better. Thank you again for last night." "Of course. Hey, I know this might be forward, but would you like to grab dinner tonight? Somewhere quiet, not a networking thing. I know this great little place that has the best tacos in Austin." I hesitated for just a moment. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure I was ready. But then I looked at Evan. Really looked at him, and I realized something. Ready or not, I wanted to try. I'd love to. That dinner changed everything. We went to this tiny taco place called Suerte, and it was perfect. Dimly lit, intimate without being overwhelming, and the food was incredible. Evan told me about his last relationship, how his ex-girlfriend had gradually made him feel like he wasn't ambitious enough, smart enough, successful enough. It took me 2 years to realize that the problem wasn't that I wasn't enough. The problem was that she needed me to be less, so she could feel like more. I understood exactly what he meant. Marcus used to say I was too sensitive, I told him, that I read too much into things. By the end, I was second-guessing every instinct I had. That's called gaslighting. I know that now. But at the time, I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I was too sensitive. Claire, being sensitive isn't a flaw. It's actually one of the best things about you. The way he said it so matter-of-fact made something inside me unclench. We talked until the restaurant was closing around us. About our families, our careers, our fears, our hopes. I told him about Lena and how she'd saved me. He told me about his sister who'd helped him through his breakup. When he walked me back to my hotel that night, he paused at the entrance. "Claire, I need to tell you something." My heart started racing. Here it comes, I thought. The catch. The red flag I'd missed. "I really like you, but I can tell you're still healing from what happened. And that's okay. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not going to push you for anything you're not ready for." I stared at him. "You're not going anywhere. I'm saying I'd like to keep getting to know you at whatever pace feels right for you. No pressure, no expectations, just seeing where this goes." Standing there under the hotel lights, looking at this kind, patient man who'd just given me permission to heal at my own speed, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Marcus. I felt safe. The next morning, before my flight back to Chicago, Evan and I exchanged numbers. "Text me when you land safely," he asked. "I will." And I did. I texted him when I landed, and he texted back immediately. Over the next few weeks, we started talking every day. Long phone calls, funny texts, photos of our daily lives. He sent me pictures of Austin sunsets. I sent him photos of Chicago architecture. But the best part was that he never made me feel like I needed to be over it to deserve his attention. When I had bad days, when the memories of Marcus and Dylan hit me unexpectedly, Evan didn't try to fix me or rush me through it. He just listened. "Healing isn't linear," he told me during one of our late-night phone calls. "Some days you'll feel strong, and some days you'll feel broken. Both are okay." 3 weeks after Austin Evan flew to Chicago for the weekend, I was nervous about seeing him again, worried that the connection we'd felt in Austin wouldn't translate to my real life. But the moment I saw him at the airport, I knew I'd been worried about nothing. He fit into my Chicago life seamlessly. We walked along the lakefront, went to a Cubs game, at deep dish pizza at my favorite place. But the moment that really got me was when he offered to cook dinner at my apartment. My tiny studio apartment with its IKEA furniture and bare walls suddenly felt like home when Evan was in it. He made pasta from scratch while I sat on my kitchen counter watching him work. We talked about everything and nothing, and for the first time since moving to Chicago, I wasn't lonely. After dinner, we were sitting on my couch, and I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone. About how Marcus used to make me feel like I was asking for too much when I wanted to spend time with him. About how Dylan had always been the golden child, and I'd spent my whole life trying to measure up. "Claire," Evan said gently, "you know, none of that was about you, right? Their betrayal says everything about who they are and nothing about who you are." I started crying then. Not the angry, bitter tears I'd cried for months, but the tears of relief. "I know that, in my head," I said, "but sometimes my heart doesn't believe it." He pulled me closer, and I let him. For the first time in almost a year, I let someone hold me while I cried. "Your heart will catch up," he whispered. "Give it time." That night, I called Lena while Evan was in the shower. "So," she said immediately, "how's the weekend going?" "Lena, I think I'm falling for him." "And how does that feel?" I thought about it for a moment. "Terrifying, but also, right, like maybe I can trust someone again." "Claire, I've never heard you sound like this. Not even with Marcus." She was right. What I felt with Evan was completely different from what I'd felt with Marcus. With Marcus, love felt desperate, like I was constantly trying to earn it. With Evan, it felt steady, like something I could count on. "This feels different, Claire," Lena said, echoing my thoughts. "This feels real." When Evan came back from the shower, he found me smiling. "Good conversation with Lena?" he asked. "The best." That night, as we lay in my bed talking quietly in the dark, Evan said something that I'll never forget. "Claire, I know you're scared to trust again, but I want you to know that with me, you never have to wonder where you stand. I'll always tell you the truth, even when it's hard to hear. Trust isn't built in a day, but we build it in moments." And lying there next to Evan, feeling safer than I'd felt in over a year, I realized something. I was ready to start building again. 6 months later, I got the call I'd been dreading. My father had passed away suddenly from a heart attack. He was only 62. I was at work when my mom called, her voice broken and small. "Claire, honey, I need you to come home." The funeral was scheduled for the following Saturday, which meant I had 5 days to prepare myself for something I wasn't sure I could handle. Seeing my family again. Seeing Dylan again. And possibly seeing Marcus. Evan found me that night sitting on my kitchen floor staring at my phone. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately sitting down next to me. "My dad died." The words felt strange coming out of my mouth, like they belonged to someone else. He pulled me into his arms without saying anything. We sat there on my kitchen floor for probably an hour, and he just held me while I cried. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked finally. I looked up at him surprised. We'd been together for 6 months, but taking him home to meet my family under these circumstances felt huge. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to, if you want me there. The thought of facing Dylan, and possibly Marcus alone, made my chest tighten with anxiety. But the thought of having Evan by my side made it feel manageable. Yes, I said quietly. I want you there. The flight home was surreal. Evan held my hand the entire time, sensing that I was getting more anxious with every mile that brought us closer to my past. I don't know if I can face him, I admitted as we were landing. Dylan called yesterday to tell me he'd be at the service. You don't have to face anyone, Evan said firmly. We're there for your father and for you. That's it. But I could feel the old anxiety creeping back in. What if seeing Marcus brought back all those feelings of inadequacy and betrayal? What if I fell apart in front of everyone? Evan must have sensed what I was thinking because he squeezed my hand tighter. Claire, look at me. I turned to face him. You are not the same person who left this town a year ago. You're stronger now. You've built a life you love with people who see your worth. Don't let ghosts from your past make you forget that. He was right. I wasn't the same broken girl who'd fled to Chicago with her life in boxes. I was stronger now, more confident, more sure of my own value. But knowing that, intellectually, and feeling it in my bones were two different things. The memorial service was being held at St. Mary's, the same church where Marcus and I were supposed to get married. As we pulled into the parking lot, I felt my chest tighten. You okay? Evan asked. Just lots of memories here. He nodded and got out to open my door. Such a small gesture, but it reminded me that I wasn't alone this time. We walked into the church together and I immediately spotted my mom near the front, surrounded by relatives and family friends. She looked so small and fragile in her black dress. When she saw me, she rushed over and pulled me into a hug. Oh, Claire, I'm so glad you're here. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry about Dad. She held me tighter, and for a moment it felt like we were just a mother and daughter grieving together, not two people with a complicated family history. And who is this handsome young man? She asked, finally noticing Evan. Mom, this is Evan. Evan, my mother, Linda. Evan stepped forward with that warm, genuine smile I'd fallen in love with. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm so sorry for your loss. Claire has told me so many wonderful stories about your husband. My mom's face lit up slightly. Please call me Linda, and thank you for coming. It means so much to have you here with Claire. I watched them talk, and I felt a warmth in my chest. Evan fit into this moment perfectly, not trying to be the center of attention, but offering exactly the right amount of comfort and support. That's when I saw them. Dylan walked in first, looking older and more tired than I remembered. His hair was shorter, and he'd lost weight. Behind him, Marcus appeared, and my breath caught in my throat. He looked exactly the same. Same expensive suit, same confident posture, same perfect hair. But when his eyes met mine across the church, I saw something I didn't expect. Fear. His gaze moved to Evan, who was still talking quietly with my mother, and I watched Marcus's face go pale. Because Evan wasn't just handsome. He had this quiet confidence, this presence, that Marcus had always tried to project, but never quite achieved. Standing next to Evan, Marcus looked small somehow. Dylan approached us cautiously, his eyes darting between me and Evan. Claire, he said quietly, thank you for coming. It's Dad's funeral, Dylan. Of course I came. The tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife. Evan stepped closer to me, not possessively, but supportively. I'm Evan, he said, extending his hand to Dylan. I'm sorry for your loss. Dylan shook his hand, but I could see his hands trembling slightly. Dylan, Claire's brother. The way he said it like he was ashamed of the title told me everything I needed to know about how he'd been living with what he'd done. Marcus hung back, not approaching our group. but I could feel him watching us from across the room. During the service, I sat between my mother and Evan, drawing strength from both of them. When it came time for family members to speak, I hadn't planned on saying anything. But as I listened to story after story about my father's kindness and generosity, I felt compelled to stand up. "I'd like to say something," I said quietly to my mom. She squeezed my hand encouragingly. I walked to the podium on shaking legs, looking out at the sea of faces. I found Evan in the crowd, and his steady gaze gave me the courage to speak. "My father taught me many things," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. "He taught me the value of hard work, the importance of family, and the power of forgiveness." I paused, my eyes finding Dylan in the audience. He was staring at me with tears in his eyes. Dad used to say that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. He believed that forgiveness wasn't something you did for other people. It was something you did for yourself. I took a deep breath. In the past year, I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing hurtful behavior or pretending things didn't happen. It means choosing to let go of the anger so you can move forward with your life. My voice cracked slightly, but I continued. Dad would want all of us to choose love over bitterness, hope over resentment, and new beginnings over old wounds. That's the legacy he leaves behind. That's how we honor his memory. I looked at Dylan one more time. By choosing to heal. As I walked back to my seat, the church was completely silent except for the sound of quiet crying. After the service, we moved to the cemetery for the burial. It was a beautiful October day with golden leaves falling around us as we gathered around my father's grave. As the pastor spoke the final words, I felt Dylan move closer to me. "Claire," he whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear him. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw something that surprised me. Regret. Deep, genuine regret. "I know," I whispered back. And I meant it. I could see in his face that he'd been living with the weight of what he'd done. That whatever happiness he'd thought he'd find with Marcus hadn't materialized. After the burial, there was a reception at my parents' house. I wasn't planning to stay long, but my mom asked me to help her in the kitchen, and I couldn't say no. As I was carrying a tray of sandwiches to the dining room, I found Marcus standing alone on the back porch. For a moment, we just looked at each other. "Claire," he said finally, "Marcus. I wanted to say I'm sorry about your father. He was a good man." "Thank you." We stood in awkward silence for a moment. "You look good," he said. "Happy." "I am happy." "Your boyfriend seems nice." I almost laughed. After everything we'd been through, this was the conversation we were having. "He is nice. He's kind and honest, and he treats me like I matter." Marcus flinched slightly at the implication. "Claire, I want you to know that I never meant for things to happen the way they did." "But they did happen, Marcus, and I'm glad they did." He looked surprised. "Because if they hadn't, I never would have moved to Chicago. I never would have built the life I have now. I never would have met Evan." I paused, looking at this man who had once been my whole world. "You did me a favor, actually. You showed me what I didn't want in a relationship." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking away. I found Evan inside talking with my cousin about Chicago architecture. When he saw me, he immediately came over. "You okay?" "Better than okay. Are you ready to get out of here?" "Whenever you are." As we were saying goodbye to my mom, Lena appeared at my side. She'd driven down from Chicago for the service. "There's my girl," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Lena, what are you doing here? Did you really think I'd miss your dad's funeral? Plus, I wanted to meet this famous Evan I've been hearing so much about." She turned to Evan with a mischievous smile. "So, you're the one who's been making my best friend glow like a Christmas tree." Evan laughed. "I think she's been doing that all on her own." The three of us walked out of the house together. and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Peace. Not just because the day was over, but because I realized something standing there with the two people who loved me most in the world. I was home, not in this town, not in this house, but with these people. As we reached our cars, I turned back to look at the house where I'd grown up. Through the window, I could see Dylan sitting alone at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. For the first time since I'd discovered his betrayal, I felt sorry for him. Not because of what he'd done to me, but because of what he'd done to himself. He'd traded his integrity for a relationship that clearly wasn't making him happy. He'd lost his sister, his family's trust, and his own self-respect. I'd lost a fiancé and a brother, but I'd gained something much more valuable. I'd gained myself back. "Ready?" Evan asked, opening the car door for me. More than ready. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. Lena was following behind us in her car, and I could see her singing along to some song I couldn't hear. Evan reached over and took my hand. "How are you feeling?" I thought about it for a moment. "Free," I said, finally. "I feel free." And I meant it. For the first time in over a year, I felt completely, totally free. Free from the anger I'd been carrying. Free from the need for revenge or validation. Free from the version of myself that had believed she wasn't enough. Pain had carved this path for me, but love had paved the way. The love of friends like Lena who refused to let me give up on myself. The love of a man like Evan who saw my worth even when I couldn't see it myself. And most importantly, the love I'd finally learned to have for myself. As we merged onto the highway heading back toward Chicago and our real life together, I realized something. The girl who had been betrayed and broken a year ago was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own value. A woman who wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. A woman who had learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. I squeezed Evan's hand and he glanced over at me with that smile that had first made me feel safe. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Just everything. How different my life is now. How grateful I am." "For what?" I looked out the window at the landscape rushing past us, thinking about all the ways my life had changed since that horrible day when I walked in on Marcus and Dylan. For second chances, for new beginnings, for learning that love isn't supposed to hurt. Evan brought my hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Here's to new beginnings, then. To new beginnings." And as we drove toward our future together, I knew with absolute certainty that the best chapters of my story were still being written. Sometimes the worst betrayal becomes your greatest blessing. Have you ever had someone's betrayal lead to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about turning pain into power, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.